So we're here with Ashley Wahlberg today, and I'm very excited because she's going to be talking to us about some spider work that she does. So welcome to our show. Please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, thanks for having me. So my name is Ashley Wahlberg. I grew up in Houston, lived there throughout high school. I went to college at West Texas A&M up in the Panhandle. I got my master's and my undergraduate there, both in wildlife biology. Whenever I graduated, I was doing education outreach with reptiles. I've been a middle school teacher, and now I teach biology at the college level.
Wow, that's fun. You sound like a jack of all trades then. Like to do
Kind of.
things. That's neat. So you're also working on a is it a master's degree or a PhD that you're working on?
PhD.
Okay, and so tell us about your research there, your dissertation research.
So I work with spiders. My main overarching goal is to use the brown widow as a study subject and look at how it got to be, all around the world, because it's originally native to either South America or Africa. People aren't too sure, but it's now found everywhere. And so I'm looking at like the mechanisms of to how it travels around and any impacts it may or may not have on the ecosystems that it gets to. So I'm looking at like microhabitat and the reproductive rates and parasitoids that kind of take over their egg sacs. So I've got a lot of different mechanisms I'm looking at with that.
Well, that's neat. I had no idea that they had made it all around the world. So
Oh yeah.
that's interesting. Okay. Um, yeah, that's so that's your research. And when do you think you might finish up, or be? Are you expecting
uh,
to graduate soon? I know that's a question we're not supposed to ask PhD students.
well, I just started
I
a
just
new
went there.
job last just started a new job last week or last month, sorry. And so I'm kind of taking a break while I get situated in this new job. I've done 2 years of the PhD so far, and while working full time, it's probably going to be another 3 or 4 whenever I start back up again.
All right. And your PhD would be in entomology?
I was doing it at Stephen F. Austin, and so that had it in forestry, but really it should be like an ecology slash biology, but forestry was the
Right.
only option they had. So that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
Well, it doesn't really matter what your degree says. It'll be what you did your dissertation on. So that
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Hey there. I'm Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm still kicking. I cannot complain. So I'd like to ask you, what kind of spiders are native to Texas and which of them have you studied?
Well, spiders native to Texas, tons and tons. Of course, the ones that people tend to be more familiar with, like your orb weavers that have the real typical pretty webs, like you think of whenever you think of spider webs. People are usually pretty familiar with wolf spiders. They usually know what widows are. Everyone thinks everything is a brown recluse, but I promise they're not as common as people make them out to be. um, as far as what I've studied, it's mostly widows and then the spiders that you'll find alongside widows. So some of your house spiders, cellar spiders, just any of the species that it's called the cobweb weaving guild. So species that make webs similar to widow webs, because you're going to find those in the same areas. So that's what I'm comparing widows to.
Oh, very cool. And what role do spiders play in the ecosystem?
So many. So the most obvious one that people think of is that, they're eating a lot of things that we consider pests, especially mosquitoes. Um, but they're also food for a lot of other organisms. There's this one snake, it's called a spider-tailed viper. It's over in the Middle East, Iraq and Iran, I believe. And instead of a rattle at the end of its tail, like we're used to with rattlesnakes, it has these modified scales that it has a big bulb, and then it has really elongated scales that look like legs. So the end of its tail looks like a spider. And it just sits there motionless, and it like twitches its tail around like a spider moving. And then a bird will come to eat what it thinks is a spider, and then the snake gets its meal. So it's trying to act like a spider to help it hunt.
That's interesting. I've never heard of that kind of adaptation on a snake. That's pretty.
They were pretty recently discovered. I think it was like the early 2000s. They haven't been known for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. We'll have to put a picture up.
Yeah, they're cool looking for sure.
So you mentioned these web building guild.
Mhm.
Where do those guys live? Where would we find them besides
Like within their webs, you mean?
like, no, I
Oh.
mean, like, are they in forests? Are they in grasslands? Are they?
Most of it is going to be associated with people. You'll find a lot of them in your garages. The house spiders are named house spiders because they're very common in people's houses. You really don't find them too much like out in the forests. They're pretty urban as far as habitat types go.
Really? That's neat. So they must have adapted a long time ago to living with people?
Probably so, yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so you've mentioned widows as well.
Mhm.
I think most people are familiar with black widows, but you've also talked about this brown widow that's showing up everywhere that it doesn't belong. So, what does a brown widow look like? How would we know if we are looking at a brown widow?
That's a much more complex question than it would seem. So first I'll start out with, there's about 34 species of widows all around the world. Many of them have the name black widow, but that can apply to lots of different species. But there's also red widows, white widows, and then brown widows. The problem with brown widows is they're the most variable of all of the species. And so whenever you're looking at a widow and you want to ID it, most people look at the abdomen, like the color and the pattern on the abdomen. For brown widows, you can't look at that because it's so variable. Sometimes they're almost solid black. Sometimes they're like a tannish color with some like stripes in there or some spots. So the only things that really hold true are their hourglass is going to be more orange instead of red, which unless you've seen a lot of them, it's kind of hard to differentiate between the two. The hourglass is also a little like thicker in the middle where it's normally like where it pinches. They have a little fatter of an hourglass. And then spinnerets, those are going to be at the very back of the abdomen. That's where their webbing comes out of. Brown widows have little yellow bars on their spinnerets, and the other species of widows don't. Most of these characteristics aren't going to be real obvious to the layperson, but if it's an adult female and they have egg sacs, that's going to be the easiest way. So our black widows, they have really smooth egg sacs, and then brown widows, they have spiky egg sacs. Ever since COVID became a thing, now even like scientific articles describe their egg sacs as looking like the Corona-19 virus.
Are you serious?
That's exactly what it looks like.
How weird that we would know what a virus cell looks like.
I know, it's just the recent papers since COVID became a thing. It's pretty funny.
That is interesting. Now, how are other than the way that they look, how are brown widows different than black widows? Do they have different roles in the ecosystems, eat different things? How are they different?
So that's part of what I'm working on figuring out. Anecdotally, it seems that whenever brown widows get to a place, over time, you kind of stop seeing black widows there. And so people are, theorizing that these brown widows are out competing the black widows. But again, that's all anecdotal. There's a couple of us working on that exact question right now. You'll find them in the same habitats, but as a general rule, brown widows tend to be more urban, and you tend to not find them in rural areas, whereas black widows, you'll find them kind of both. I cannot tell you how many times I'm just like walking through a shopping center. Man, there's black widows everywhere. People don't know they're there. I know they're there because I look for them, but people walk past them all the time and they're not hurting anything. People just only freak out about them when they know that they're there.
Right. I
But
bet that's true.
super common.
Just like snakes. I mean, snakes are all around us, and when people find one, they flip out, lose their mind.
Oh yeah.
God, snake.
I've got some of those in my office too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
So why is it important to understand the impacts of the brown widow spider moving into Texas? Like, why should we as the general population care about that topic?
So the majority of why I'm looking at this, like, yes, I love spiders, and yes, I enjoy working with them, but the spider aspect of my project is not the important part. It's the whole ecological question as to this non-native species getting into an already established environment and just messing up the whole hierarchy of how everything is working. So, I'm looking at that with the spider as an example. A lot of people will do it with a mammal or birds or plants, but everything, like the whole ecosystem, can be disturbed differently depending on what the incoming, non-native species is. So it's good to look at, all different taxa in that sense.
100% agree. It's always good to have a good diversity of knowledge with whatever you're studying or looking at.
Oh yeah.
So spiders and spider webs, we often see them associated with Halloween. And in many areas of Texas, it does kind of seem like the spider webs are all over the place in fall. What kind of spiders are creating these webs that we kind of see this time of year? And why are their webs so common during the fall?
Okay, so for most spiders, they're going to live about a year, and the cycles for them, their life cycles, all match up pretty well. So for those ones that do live about a year, egg sacs are laid, in the fall. Spiderlings will emerge from the egg sacs in the spring, and so they're going to be very tiny. And so you're probably having just as many spiders in the spring as you do in the fall, but they're so small that you just really don't know they're there. But all spring and all summer, they're growing and getting bigger. So them being bigger means bigger prey, which means bigger webs. So you're starting to notice these things more simply because they're getting bigger. And then, by the time fall comes around, the spiders are adults and they're ready to mate. So they're all like full sized, and males are moving around trying to find females. Females have webs up everywhere trying to get a bunch of food so they can lay more eggs, to have more babies, and then the whole cycle just repeats itself. As far as web type, so the best ways I can describe them. So the ones that you're more likely to run like face first into, those are orb weavers. Ones that, there are some orb weavers that they'll only build their web at night. They'll keep it up all night and then they take it down in the morning. And whenever they take it down, they eat it. That way they can regain some of that energy that they expended to make the web, and then they do it again the next night. It really only takes them maybe 20, 30 minutes to make their webs. It's not as long as people think. If there's a morning where, it's really humid, there's a lot of dew in the grass, and you see all those tiny little webs just all over the grass, they look like little bowls. A lot of those belong to sheet weavers. The bowl and doily spiders, the most common, they have like a bowl and then a flat portion over it. So they're called bowl and doily. If you see those spider webs where it looks like a big, thick dryer sheet, and it kind of just comes to a tunnel at one point, those are your grass spiders. They look really similar to wolf spiders. They're really common throughout Texas. A lot of people call them wolf spiders. Wolf spiders don't make webs. They're active hunters. They can make webbing for their egg sacs, but that's why they carry their egg sacs with them. It's because they don't have a home base. They just travel around looking for stuff to eat all the time.
That's interesting. I didn't know that I knew that a lot of spiders would take down their web every day and put it back up. I always wondered how that happened, like if it's on a reel in there and they just reel it back in, or
No, they just eat it.
I don't know. I'm not an entomologist, okay? I've had no formal training. So it's not our imagination then that the webs anyway are more common in the fall.
Yeah. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. All right.
Real thing.
Interesting. So do you have some spiders you can show us?
I sure do.
Let's look at some of your friends.
All right. And I brought a flashlight too if we need more light.
Okay.
So there's a glare on him. This is my Brazilian black tarantula. He's like my pride and joy. He's very well-mannered.
Oh.
He's the one that if people want to, get an experience with the tarantula, it's him.
Oh, look at him. He's crawling out.
Yeah.
He's
Get
pretty.
him out without him running off. He's got a little dirt on him, but here, buddy.
And these little keepers that you have them in, is that where they always stay?
No, I just took them out of their regular homes and put them on my desk for easier access because it would take me probably like a solid 5 minutes to coax them into these containers.
Right. I just wanted to make that point so that people didn't think you were making him live in there all of his life.
Yeah, no. This is just their little just sitting on my desk in these.
A little
so that's my Brazilian black.
It's very pretty.
This is a Mexican fire leg. I am not gonna take her out. She's not as calm. She's a Mexican fire leg, so from Mexico. All these species that I'm showing you here, they don't have very strong venom, but they do have urticating hairs. So whenever I was getting her in her container earlier, she started rubbing her back legs up against her abdomen, and it's like flicking off those little hairs.
Really?
And it's like fiberglass, and it gets on you, and it is so incredibly itchy.
Wow.
It's very obnoxious.
I had no idea. How do you get that off?
God forbid you get it in your eye or your nasal. Like, oh my God.
Okay, so I haven't inhaled it before. I thought I was dying.
Are you serious?
Like trying to scratch my esophagus. Yeah, that doesn't work.
So how do you, I mean, do you use duct tape to get those hairs off of you or what?
The easiest seems to be just to shower for a while. I just sat in the shower for a long time. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Start gargling water and stuff. This one, I don't know how well you can see her. This is a Texas brown. So this is the one that most people see in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
She's not super calm. She's probably okay, but I don't want to get her out either. But this is she's not interested in doing much of anything. This is the common species that people will see around Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, she's not having it.
And
I do also have a little scorpion here I wanted to show you something cool with.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, moving to Texas, the whole scorpion thing, that was fun. Yeah. My daughter has been stung several times. She learned about scorpions right away, sadly. Oh, look at him glow.
So under black light, they fluoresce a lot.
Nice.
So if you ever go outside at night with a black light, it's super easy to find scorpions.
Really?
Yeah.
Now I want to do that.
It's like they're glowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me change it.
Well, that's really interesting. So this, what did you call the one we have here in Texas? Common brown? Is that what you said?
Texas brown.
Texas brown.
Mm-hmm. And that's the taxonomy of spiders is a little muddied. They're all in the same genus. Some people have now split what's in Texas. Instead of one species like it used to be, it's now like 11 or 12 species, but they're really hard to tell apart. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah. Can they tell each other apart or do they interbreed?
That's not something I can answer. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sure they can tell each other apart, but I guess that all
I just want to throw my 2 cents in there. I kept Texas browns for a while, and we had a Texas brown, and then one of the subspecies, and I have a videoed mating between 2 of the different subspecies. Just throwing that out there.
Well, I think a lot of it is also dependent on what people are defining a species as, because it depends on if you're trying to separate them by looks or by range or by genetics or whatever. You know how people like to lumpers and splitters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the Texas one, tell us, where it lives and what kind of web, if any, and what it eats and what eats it.
Okay, so they're common throughout, probably the western 2/3 of the state. We do have them here in East Texas too, but they're not very common. But pretty much throughout the whole state, you can find tarantulas. This is getting to be the time of year when people start seeing a lot of them, because males, whenever they mature around 4 or 5 years old. Their sole purpose in life at that point is to breed, because they're probably going to live maybe a year more and then they're going to die, whereas the females can live more than 20 years. So
Really?
females will have a burrow. It's really hard to find burrows. They don't really make like anything above ground that you'll see unless you just happen to see them out. But the females will have burrows, and males are just constantly walking around trying to find, like, pick up on pheromone trails of females. So this time of year, whenever you see them all crossing the roads and everything, they're almost all males that are doing that. And they're just trying to find a lady friend before winter comes and they possibly die. As far as eating, anything they can fit into their mouths. They're not picky.
Really?
Yeah, so my snakes, I feed them frozen thawed mice. And whenever a snake doesn't want to eat, I'll just take the mice and give it to one of the tarantulas.
Really?
Yeah, they don't care. They'll eat whatever.
Wow. So a little pinky. They can eat a little
Yeah.
pinky, or wow. That's neat.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do have they've got those urticating hairs on them, like I was talking about earlier, that are like fiberglass and can be really irritating. If you get bit by one of our tarantulas here in Texas, it's not like a serious medical concern or anything. Like, it's going to hurt because the fangs are big, but the venom is very weak. It's
okay.
It's really not much to worry about.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking about asking you about that. And what about the black widow? If a widow bites you, is it just like a bee sting kind of thing, or what?
So the last person that we know of that died from a black widow bite was in like 1983. Like, you always hear, oh my God, it's so deadly, blah, blah, blah. That's just not the case. Sure, you don't want to be bitten by one. I do have a friend who's a toxicologist in Houston, and he said of all the bites he treats, that black widows appear to be the most painful.
Really?
But if you go to a hospital, they can give you pain management, but antivenom for widows isn't made very regularly, so it's not really accessible to people. So that's not really something you get. They're just managing your pain. Personally, I don't want to pay a couple $1,000s for that, so I wouldn't go to the hospital if I got bit by one, but I would never tell someone else, like, don't go. Like, if you're concerned, of course, go. But
sure,
I know enough about it to be okay with not going.
Sure. And how long does that really intense pain last?
I don't know.
I'm sure it varies from person to person and how much venom you got and stuff, but
yeah, and probably where you got bit at. That's not something I've really read up on a whole lot. I do a lot more with ecology.
have you been bitten by a lot of your spiders?
Nope.
Really?
None.
Okay. Well,
they don't. People seem to think that they've got it out for you or something. That's no. I mean, I'm fully confident. I could put dozens on my arm, let them crawl all over me. They're not gonna bite just because they're on me. Like, they don't know that that's me. They're just walking on something. They're more prone to biting if you, like, lean up against them or you sit on them, or most of it's when you don't know that they're there and then you end up inadvertently squishing them.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's very good to know. So Ashley, how did you become so interested in spiders?
So whenever I was doing my master's, I got a chance to take an arachnology course. And I was interested in snakes already at that point. So kind of already in the field of creepy crawlies that no one else likes, sort of thing. So I was like, oh, spiders, that sounds cool. And so I started taking the class and just learning about all the different types of arachnids and, all their different mechanisms that they have that they've adapted over the years, whether it be for hunting or camouflage or, you know, parental care, like whatever it is, like I just find them super fascinating. And it's not like, you know, you walk outside, you see a mammal, you can go pick up a book, figure out what that mammal is. You can't do that with a lot of invertebrates. There's way too many of them. We don't know a lot about them. A lot of them aren't even described as a specific species. There's just a lot more to learn, and they're so variable. And I kind of went down a rabbit hole once I started learning about them. The
Mhm.
whole phrase, like, knowledge is power, like, fully believe that after this class. I think a lot of people would be a lot less scared of spiders and snakes if they would just learn about them. It's just because people don't know anything about them.
I think you're right about that. That's very true. Especially, I mean, if they could find out that they aren't out to get you,
Yeah.
that would be interesting to know. Well, what sort of career opportunities are there in entomology, and what advice would you have, you know, for somebody who's really interested in insects or spiders or what have you, and they might want to make a career out of that?
So a lot of the jobs are going to be like working with museum or university collections, whether it be identifying species, because a lot of what's been collected, you know, people will know it's at least part of this family. But past that, we just know that it's not one of the other species that we know of. So we know it's different, but no one's taken the time to describe it. Okay, well, multiply that by, like, you know, millions. And
Wow.
there's a lot out there that just aren't described because we don't know enough about them because there's so many. The USDA also employs a lot of, like, entomologists, mostly working with species that are detrimental to crops or timber or something else that we humans rely on a lot. So a lot of it is with, you know, a single species or a handful of species uh, that cause a lot of problems. The thing that the job that I really feel like I missed out on in life, because I just kind of became aware of it in the past couple of years, and would have been my dream job as a forensic entomologist. So, you know, dead bodies and the bugs that get to them. You can tell a lot about a body based on, you know, what bugs are there, their stage of life. Like, you know, that, you know, if there's eggs already, they have to have been there for this amount of time. And, you know, if this specific beetle is there, that tells you something. I think all that would be fascinating.
That would be, wouldn't it? I think that's
Yeah.
getting a lot of people interested in entomology. What are the are your chances of finding a job, are they good? Are they slim? What are, you know, how abundant are these jobs?
So if you concentrate on entomology, whether you have an entomology degree or not, the USDA, they usually are looking for people that have, you know, so many hours worth of college credit in entomology related classes. So most people going through just a regular, maybe biology degree, you'd take one or two entomology classes, maybe, but that wouldn't qualify you for a lot of those USDA jobs. So if you're wanting to go that route, it's really only 4 or 5 classes that would help you meet the minimum requirements. So it wouldn't require a lot if you want to go that route with it. If not, I would recommend, you know, you can always specialize in whatever you want, but keep your degree kind of more general, like biology. Biology is very applicable to everything. And then, you know, if you want to be really into invertebrates or really into birds, then sure, like, do that too. But I wouldn't necessarily do it my whole degree.
That's good advice. That's good advice. Sort of make yourself versatile, because you might have to take something first just to get a job and pay the bills.
I was a waitress for 2 years. I
Yeah,
didn't want to do that, but had to pay the bills.
that's right. We've got about 7.5 minutes left
Okay, cool.
on this one, and, you know, we could do the other one.
Yeah, we only have 2 questions. We might be able to roll through it.
Okay.
So our favorite question is to ask about biology blunders, where something didn't go exactly as planned and you ended up with a funny story. Do you have any funny biology blunders you'd be willing to share with us today?
I do, and they pretty much all have to do with COVID too. uh, so, I have, a whole colony of widows, like thousands and thousands, and they're kept in my office. Well, whenever COVID first happened, and, they told us we couldn't go up to the schools anymore, that, obviously became a problem, trying to take care of thousands of spiders. So I had gotten a deal where I could go up there once a week to feed and take care of everything, and then they'd be good for the next week. Well, a lot of things can happen during that week that I'm not going up there. So for instance, some egg sacs ended up not having a lid put on all the way. So one time I came back and there's just babies all over my office. One time I would feed my tarantulas too while I was there, and not coming back for a week. And so whenever I came back the following week and I walked into my office, the first thing I'd see is one of the tarantula enclosures just wide open. And I just looked at him like, oh no, like I didn't close it after I fed him. And of course he wasn't in there. And there happened to be one other girl at school who liked spiders too. So I went and got her and we just started rummaging around through my office, and we did end up finding him. He was behind some books. I didn't tell my boss about that one. No one else was up there. And then also during COVID, when no one else is there, for all the little baby spiders, because they're super tiny, I would feed fruit flies. Well, the fruit flies, they're wingless, but they can gain those wings back after a certain amount of generations. It just happens sometimes. So one of the containers of fruit flies, I went to open it to dump fruit flies into a bowl, which then I feed them from there. Well, they had apparently gained wings, and I opened the lid and it was like a cloud of fruit flies. Like so many fruit flies just flew out and like at my face. And before I could really do anything about it, like get the lid closed, there were so many. And they just like stayed in the cloud and just like left my office and went into the hallway. And I just kind of like looked around. I was like, well, it's COVID. No one's here. There's just fruit flies around the building now.
Oh my goodness. Well, you're lucky that those things happened during COVID, but now everybody knows because you've told everybody.
Right? It's okay. It was like what, 2 years ago? It's fine.
Yeah. No big deal. No one was injured. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about spiders or entomology or what you do?
Yeah, there's just a little bit I'd like to give about spiders and some good they do for people, because I know people like to hate on them. But the venom that spiders have, venom is just a lot of different proteins built together. So those proteins are used for so many different medicines that we rely on. So some of the lists of medicines that they're currently being used for, they have, oh God bless it. Hold on, let me find my paper. There we go. All right, so pain medications, multiple sclerosis, various types of cancers, high blood pressure, Alzheimer's. There's lists and lists and lists of different medications that we need their venom for to make. And snake venom too, they use that for. So they do have a purpose, even outside of the ecosystem. They do have a purpose for us too.
Sure.
So hopefully people can appreciate them a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. I knew about snake venom, being used for several different things. I think copperhead venom might be used for a breast cancer drug. And
yep, that's a big one.
Yeah.
But same thing with spiders.
Okay, well that's really neat. Are the spiders, dumb question here, are they milked? Are they what?
Yeah, it can be done pretty much the same way as snakes. You're just not getting very much from each spider. So it takes a lot of spiders.
Wow. That would be
yeah, interesting job.
I just picture somebody milking 1,000 spiders a day or something like that.
Oh man. Yeah. That doesn't sound like a very fun job.
Somebody's got to do it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Ashley, thank you so much. I really enjoyed learning about your spiders and what you do. This was really interesting. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. I'm always happy to, hopefully help people appreciate them a little bit more.
Yeah.